Dad left a voicemail. We cut you off. Don't come to the Thanksgiving. I just texted back. I appreciate. That night, I removed my name from their joint business account. 36 hours later, 88 missed calls, and by midnight, their calls turned to desperate voicemails. The voicemail came through at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was in the middle of reviewing a client's tax portfolio when my phone buzzed. Dad's name flashed across the screen, but I let it go to voicemail. We hadn't spoken in 3 weeks, which wasn't unusual lately. Our relationship had been strained since I'd started asking questions about the family business questions nobody wanted to answer. I finished my work before listening to the message. Something about seeing his name made my stomach tighten, a Pavlovian response to years of disappointment dressed up as parental concern. His voice was cold when I finally pressed play. Haley, your mother and I have discussed this extensively, and we've decided it's time you learn to stand on your own 2 feet. We're cutting you off, financially effective immediately. Also, don't bother coming to Thanksgiving this year. We need some space from your constant negativity and accusations. Maybe this will teach you some gratitude. The message ended abruptly. No goodbye, no love you. Just the automated voice telling me I could press 1 to replay 7 to delete. I sat there in my home office staring at the phone. 28 years old, and my father had just uninvited me from Thanksgiving via voicemail. The cutting off part was almost laughable. I hadn't taken money from them in 6 years, not since I'd graduated with my CPA certification and started my own practice. But that's not what made my hands shake. What made my blood run cold was the casual cruelty of it, the assumption that I needed them, that I was still the little girl who'd cry when Daddy raised his voice. The complete disregard for the real issue I'd been trying to address, the fact that they'd been using my name and social security number on business documents without my knowledge or permission since I was 19. I discovered it by accident 3 months earlier. A client had mentioned seeing my name listed as a principal on the LLC paperwork for Coleman and Associates, my parents' consulting firm. I'd laughed it off at first, assuming it was a mistake. But when I went home and dug through the box of documents my mother had given me for safekeeping years ago, there it was, my signature on papers I'd never seen before, dated from my sophomore year of college. The confrontation had been ugly. Mom cried. Dad got defensive, then angry. They insisted they'd done it to protect the family assets and give me a stake in the business. When I pointed out that forging my signature was illegal, Dad had called me ungrateful. When I suggested we needed to rectify the situation properly, Mom accused me of trying to destroy the family. The conversations had escalated from there. 3 weeks ago, I told them I wanted my name removed from all business documents immediately, or I'd be forced to take legal action. Dad had hung up on me. Mom had sent a text saying I was breaking her heart. And now this voicemail. I picked up my phone and typed out a response. I appreciate the heads up. Short, simple. No emotion, no argument, no begging, just acknowledgement. Then I opened my laptop and logged into the online banking portal for Coleman and Associates. Here's the thing. Nobody tells you about being added to business accounts without your knowledge. Once you're on them, you have full access. My parents had made me a co-owner on paper to shield assets, never imagining I might actually exercise the rights that came with that designation. I'd been monitoring the account since I discovered my name on the paperwork, not touching anything, just watching, learning their patterns. Dad made all the major financial decisions, but he wasn't particularly careful about maintaining adequate reserves. The business ran on a thin margin, with most of their operating capital tied up in ongoing projects. The current balance was $847,000. Not their total worth, but the liquid cash they needed for payroll, vendor payments, and operating expenses. Their biggest client payment wasn't due for another 6 weeks. I stared at the screen for a long time. This wasn't about revenge. This was about protection. They'd already proven they'd use my identity however they saw fit. What would stop them from taking out loans in my name, running up debt, tanking my credit score along with theirs if the business ever went south? The notification settings showed that Dad was the only one who received alerts for account activity. Mom didn't even have online access. She still did everything by phone or in person, technologically incompetent by choice. I created a new business account at a different bank. Then I transferred $847,000 from Coleman and Associates into it. The whole process took less than 10 minutes. My finger hovered over the confirm button for maybe 30 seconds. Then I clicked it. The confirmation screen appeared. Transfer complete. Processing time 24 to 48 hours. I closed my laptop and went to make dinner. My hands were steady. I felt nothing but a strange holocaunt. The first call came 39 hours later. I was at the gym when my phone started ringing. Dad's name. I declined the call and continued my workout. By the time I finished my cool down, there were 4 more missed calls from him and 2 from Mom. Then the text started. Dad, call me immediately. Dad, Haley, this is urgent. Dad, call me now. Mom, sweetie, please call your father. He's very upset. I drove home, showered, and made myself a salad. The phone kept buzzing. I turned it face down on the counter and ate slowly, methodically. Each bite was deliberate. Each moment of silence was mine. When I finally picked up the phone again, there were 23 missed calls. The voicemails had started. Dad's first message was controlled fury. I don't know what you think you're doing, but you need to reverse that transfer immediately. This is not a game, Haley. Call me back. The second one was louder. You have stolen money from the family business. That's theft. I will press charges if you don't fix this right now. Mom's messages were tearful. Please, honey, just talk to us. Whatever's wrong, we can fix it. Your father is beside himself. I deleted them all without finishing any of them. The calls continued through the evening. Different family members started reaching out. My older brother Jason sent a text. What the hell did you do? Dad's losing it. My Aunt Carol called, left a message about how families should stick together. Cousin Brandon sent a Facebook message asking if everything was okay. They'd mobilized the entire family, painting me as the villain. Poor Haley having some kind of breakdown. Poor Haley stealing from her own parents. None of them knew the full story. Of course, Mom and Dad would never tell them about the forged documents, the years of using my identity without permission. That would make them look bad. By midnight, I had 88 missed calls across various family members. The voicemails had shifted in tone. Dad's rage had given way to something else. Panic. Haley, please. We have payroll due Friday. We'll lose everything if those checks bounce. Just, we can talk about this. Whatever you want, we can work it out. Mom's voice was barely intelligible through her crying. You're destroying us, your own family. How can you do this after everything we've done for you? There it was. The manipulation I'd grown up with. The guilt trips, the gaslighting. After everything we've done for you really meant after we controlled every aspect of your life and expected eternal gratitude for basic parenting. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my balcony. The November air was cold, but I didn't mind. The city lights stretched out before me, and for the first time in months I felt like I could breathe. My phone rang again. Jason. I answered this time. Jesus Christ, Haley, what is going on? His voice was strained. Dad called me at 11 p.m., saying you stole almost $1 million from them. Did he mention the part where they've been using my identity illegally for 9 years? My voice was calm, almost pleasant. Silence on the other end. What are you talking about? I explained it all. The forged signatures, the LLC paperwork, the business accounts I never agreed to be on, the loan documents I'd found with my name as a guarantor for loans I'd never seen a penny from. They put me on everything to hide assets, Jason, to protect themselves financially. But they never asked me. They just took my identity when I was a teenager and used it however they wanted. That can't be right. But his voice was uncertain now. They wouldn't. I have the documents. Want me to send them to you? Another pause. Did you really take all their money? I took money from an account with my name on it. That's not theft. That's me finally exercising my legal right to assets I apparently co-own according to their own paperwork. They're going to lose the business. Then they should have thought about that before committing identity fraud. I took a sip of wine. For 9 years, Jason, 9 years of using my name, my credit, my identity. What happens if their business fails? What happens if they default on loans? I'm listed as a guarantor for my credit is destroyed. My financial future is tied to their decisions, and I never even agreed to it. I could hear him breathing, processing. What do you want? He finally asked. I want my name off everything legally properly. Every document, every account, every piece of paper that has my signature real or forged. I want a complete severance from their business, and I want it documented by a lawyer. And if they do that, you'll give the money back. If they do that, and if they agree to never use my identity again for anything without my explicit written consent, and if they apologize, actually apologize, not that non-apology garbage where they make me the villain, then we can discuss the return of the funds. Haley, you know Dad's never going to apologize. Then I guess he's going to have a really rough month. I hung up before he could respond. The calls stopped around 2:00 a.m. I assumed they'd finally gone to sleep, or maybe they'd given up for the night. I slept better than I had in months. Thursday morning brought a new wave. This time it was Mom who called at 7:00 a.m. I answered. How could you do this to us? Her voice was hoarse from crying. We're your parents. You forged my signature on legal documents. We were protecting you, giving you a future. You were protecting yourselves and using me to do it. I was still in bed staring at the ceiling. Did you really think I wouldn't eventually find out? We were going to tell you when the time was right. When I was 30, 40. When you died, and I discovered I was liable for debts I didn't even know existed. She made a choking sound. Your father built that business from nothing. It's our entire life, our retirement, everything we have. And you put it all in my name without asking me. You're being so selfish. The tears were gone now, replaced by anger. So spoiled and selfish. We gave you everything. Stop! My voice cut through her rising hysteria. Just stop! You gave me a childhood. That's what parents are supposed to do. You don't get to hold that over my head forever. And you definitely don't get to commit fraud and call it a gift. We need that money. You need to have your lawyer draw up paperwork removing my name from all business assets and liabilities, every single one. When that's done, notarized, and filed with the appropriate agencies, we'll talk about the money. That could take weeks. We have payroll tomorrow. You should have planned better. I hung up. The doorbell rang 20 minutes later. I checked the camera. Dad's Mercedes was parked outside my building. He was standing at the entrance looking haggard in a wrinkled shirt. He'd aged 10 years overnight. I didn't buzz him in. He called my phone. I declined. He rang the bell again, then started pressing it repeatedly. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen, opened her door and said something to him. He stopped ringing but didn't leave. I got dressed, made coffee, and watched him through the camera app. He stayed there for 45 minutes before finally getting back in his car. The email arrived an hour later. Subject line from your father. The message was long rambling, switching between rage and pleading. He called me vindictive, cruel, heartless. He said Mom was having chest pains from the stress. He said I was destroying the family. He said I'd regret this. And then buried in the middle of the third paragraph, if you had just kept your mouth shut and let us handle things, none of this would have happened. There it was. The truth he didn't even realize he was admitting. This wasn't about protecting me or giving me a stake in anything. This was about me being compliant, about me not asking questions, about me being a convenient name on a piece of paper instead of a person with rights and autonomy. I forwarded the email to my lawyer with a brief note. Please file this with the rest of the evidence. Because I'd hired a lawyer 3 weeks ago, right after the first big fight, I'd shown him everything. The forged signatures, the documents I'd never seen, the timeline of how my identity had been used. He'd been clear. I had multiple legal options, including pressing charges for identity theft and fraud. But if you go that route, he'd warned, it destroys your relationship with your parents permanently. I'd told him I'd think about it. Now I had him on retainer, ready to move forward if necessary. Friday afternoon brought a shift I hadn't anticipated. My office phone rang. The landline I gave to exactly 3 people. One of them was my accountant, Maria, who'd been helping me organize my own finances after the mess with my parents came to light. Haley, I just got a very strange call from someone claiming to be your father's business partner. Her voice was cautious. A man named Gerald Hutchinson. My stomach dropped. Gerald was Dad's silent partner. The guy who'd invested in Coleman and Associates 5 years ago when they needed capital to expand. I'd met him exactly twice at company holiday parties. What did he want? He was asking about your current financial situation, whether you had the means to return borrowed funds. I told him I couldn't discuss client information, but he got pretty aggressive. Started implying you'd stolen from the company and that he was considering legal action. This was escalating faster than I'd expected. Dad wasn't just panicking privately. He was recruiting allies, building a narrative where I was the criminal. Thanks for the heads up, Maria. If he calls again, just hang up. Already planning on it. But Haley, be careful. This guy sounded like he meant business. After we hung up, I pulled up the LLC documents again. Sure enough, Gerald Hutchinson was listed as owning 30% of Coleman and Associates, which meant he had a vested interest in the company's survival and 30% of a reason to come after me. I called David immediately. They're expanding their strategy, he said after I explained, trying to pressure you from multiple angles. It's a common tactic when people feel cornered. Can Hutchinson actually do anything? Not really. You're still a listed principal on the company, which means you had every legal right to access those funds. But he might try to make noise file complaints, pressure you through other channels. He paused. How committed are you to seeing this through? Completely. Good, because it's probably going to get worse before it gets better. He was right. Jason called again Friday morning. Dad's at the bank trying to stop the transfer. They told him it's already completed, and the only way to get it back is for you to voluntarily return it. Good to know the banking system works as intended. Haley, this is serious. He's talking about filing a police report for what I'm listed as an authorized account holder. I transferred money from an account I legally have access to into another account in my name. That's not a crime. He says you stole it, and I say he committed identity fraud for 9 years. Wonder whose story the police will find more compelling when I show them the forged signatures. I could hear him talking to someone in the background, probably his wife Sarah. What's your end game here? He asked. You want them to lose everything? I want them to acknowledge what they did was wrong. I want them to fix it. And I want them to understand they can't just treat me like a prop in their financial planning. You know they're never going to see it that way. Then I guess we're at an impasse. Sarah's voice came through faintly. Ask her if she'll meet with them. Jason relayed the message. I thought about it. The voicemails, the doorbell ringing, the email calling me vindictive, the complete lack of any real accountability. I'll meet with them once I receive the paperwork from their lawyer removing my name from all business assets and liabilities. Not before. That's not reasonable, Haley. They forged my signature. They used my social security number without my permission. They put me on as a guarantor for business loans I never agreed to. And when I asked them to fix it, they cut me off and uninvited me from Thanksgiving. My voice finally rose. So no, I don't think requiring them to actually address the problem before I give them back their money is unreasonable. He was quiet for a moment. You really think they forged your signature? I know they did. I was in Arizona at a conference the day one of those documents was supposedly signed in Michigan. I have the hotel receipts and the conference registration to prove it. Jesus. Yeah. He hung up without saying goodbye. Monday morning brought a new wave. By then the family narrative had solidified. Messages from cousins, uncles, and distant relatives filled my phone. Disbelief, disappointment, concern about my mental state, suggestions that I seek help. Nobody asked what my parents had done to provoke this. Nobody wanted to hear about the forged documents. The story was simple. Haley had a breakdown and stole from her own parents. I sat in my office staring at my computer screen without really seeing it. My next client wasn't due for an hour. The silence felt oppressive. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Is this Haley Coleman? Yes. My name is Jennifer Park. I'm a certified fraud examiner, and I was hired by Coleman and Associates to review their accounts. I was hoping we could set up a time to talk. My heart started racing. About what? About the recent transfer of funds and the circumstances surrounding it. I want to be clear, I'm conducting an independent investigation. I'm not working for your parents directly, but for their insurance company. They filed a claim for the missing funds, and my job is to determine if there was actually any fraudulent activity. This was new and potentially dangerous. I need to speak with my attorney before I agree to anything. Of course, that's completely reasonable. She gave me her contact information. I'll be in touch with your lawyer directly to schedule something. For what it's worth, Miss Coleman, I review these family business disputes all the time. Things are rarely as simple as they first appear. After she hung up, I immediately called David. That's actually good news, he said. How is that good news? Because a real investigator will look at all the evidence, not just your parents' version of events. If anything, this gives us an opportunity to present your side with documentation. The forged signatures, the timeline, everything. You think she'll actually be impartial? Jennifer Park. He made a considering sound. I've crossed paths with her before on another case. She's thorough and fair. If the evidence supports you, she'll say so in her report. And if the insurance company denies your parents' claim based on that report, it weakens their position significantly. Maybe he was right. Maybe this wasn't an escalation but an opportunity. Set up the meeting, I told him. Let's show her everything. The weekend was quieter. Fewer calls, fewer voicemails. I spent Saturday cleaning my apartment and Sunday meal prepping for the week. Normal mundane tasks that felt like luxury because my phone wasn't constantly buzzing. But Sunday night brought an email that made my blood pressure spike. It was from my mother's sister, Aunt Linda, who I'd always been close with growing up. The subject line read, "Disappointed. Haley, I never thought I'd see the day when you turn your back on family like this. Your parents are devastated. Your mother can barely get out of bed. Whatever disagreement you're having, this is not the way to handle it. Stealing from your own family, your grandmother would be ashamed. I taught you better than this. You need to make this right before you destroy everything your parents have worked for. This is not who you are." I read it 3 times, feeling each word like a physical blow. Aunt Linda had been at my college graduation. She'd helped me move into my first apartment. We'd had lunch together just 2 months ago talking about her upcoming retirement and laughing about old family stories. And now she thought I was a thief, because that's what my parents had told everyone. Not the truth about forged signatures and identity theft, just the simple, digestible story. Ungrateful daughter steals from hardworking parents. I started typing a response explaining everything. Then I stopped, deleted it, started again. If Aunt Linda wanted to believe I was capable of theft without even asking for my side of the story, then she'd already made her choice. Defending myself would just make me look desperate. Instead, I wrote back, "I'm sorry you feel that way. There's more to this situation than you've been told, but I understand you're getting your information from one source. I hope someday you'll ask me about what really happened." I hit send before I could second guess it. 10 minutes later, she replied, "Your mother would never lie to me." I didn't respond to that one. The family fracturing was worse than I'd anticipated. By Monday morning, I had messages from 3 cousins, my Uncle Pete, and even my grandmother's neighbor, which meant Grandma knew, even though she didn't have a cell phone to contact me directly. Everyone had the same energy: disbelief, disappointment, concern about my mental state, suggestions that I seek help. Nobody asked what my parents had done to provoke this. Nobody wanted to hear about the forged documents. The narrative was set. Haley had a breakdown and committed a terrible crime against her loving parents. I sat in my office that morning staring at my computer screen without really seeing it. My next client wasn't due for an hour. The silence felt oppressive. Monday morning, I got an email from a law firm I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "Coleman and Associates LLC request for meeting." The email was professional, carefully worded. They represented my parents and wanted to schedule a mediation session to resolve the current financial dispute. They suggested Wednesday at 2:00 p.m. at their offices. I forwarded it to my lawyer. He called me within an hour. They're taking this seriously now. Hiring representation means they know they're exposed. Should I agree to the meeting? Only if you want to. But go in, knowing they're going to try every manipulation tactic in the book. They'll cry. They'll yell. They'll guilt trip you. Stay focused on what you want. Wednesday came. I took the afternoon off and drove to the law offices in downtown Detroit. The building was old, but well-maintained, the kind of place that screamed established family practice. My lawyer, David Chen, met me in the lobby. He was younger than my parents' attorney, probably mid-40s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor I appreciated. "Remember," he said as we rode the elevator up, "you're not the one who committed fraud. Don't let them make you feel like the villain." The conference room was exactly what I expected. Big table, leather chairs, a view of the city. Mom and Dad were already there with their attorney, a silver-haired man in an expensive suit. Mom's eyes were red and puffy. Dad looked like he hadn't slept in days. Neither of them made eye contact with me. Their attorney, who introduced himself as Robert Williamson, started with pleasantries that felt hollow. Then he got down to business. "Miss Coleman, your parents have asked me to facilitate a resolution to this unfortunate situation. They're prepared to make certain concessions if you agree to return the funds you transferred." "I'm prepared to return the funds when my name is legally removed from all business documents," I replied evenly. "That's a complex process that will take considerable time." Then they should have started it 3 weeks ago when I first asked. Mom made a sound like a wounded animal. Dad's jaw tightened. Williamson continued unfazed. "Your parents are willing to remove you from future business decisions and ensure you have no further involvement in the company, but they need access to their operating capital immediately. Show me the paperwork." He slid a folder across the table. I opened it and started reading. David leaned in, scanning the documents with me. It was garbage. Vague language about transitioning responsibilities and reorganizing business structure. Nothing concrete about removing my name. Nothing about addressing the forged signatures. Nothing that would actually protect me. "This is unacceptable," David said. "My client needs complete removal from all LLC documentation, all bank accounts, all loan agreements, and all liability for business debts. This document doesn't address any of that specifically." Williamson looked annoyed. "These things take time to properly execute." "You've had time," I interrupted. "I brought this up 3 months ago. Instead of addressing it, you ignored me, got angry with me, and then cut me off." I looked directly at my father for the first time. "You left me a voicemail, uninviting me from Thanksgiving, and telling me I was cut off financially, even though I haven't taken money from you in years. You wanted to punish me for asking questions, for wanting control over my own identity." Dad's face turned red. "We built that business for you, for this family. You built it using my name without my permission. We're your parents." Mom's voice cracked. "We shouldn't need permission." The room went silent. David spoke calmly. "Actually, Mrs. Coleman, you do need permission. What you did is called identity theft, and it's a federal crime." Williamson held up a hand. "Let's not throw around accusations." "They're not accusations," I said. "I have proof. Signatures that aren't mine. Documents supposedly signed on dates when I can prove I was in different states. A paper trail of my identity being used without my knowledge or consent. Dad stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "This is ridiculous. You're our daughter. We were protecting you." Protecting me from what I stood to, facing him across the table, from having my own financial identity, from making my own choices. You wanted to hide assets and I was convenient. That's all this ever was. That's not true. Then why didn't you tell me? Why did I have to find out by accident that I've been listed as a principal on your LLC for 9 years? He had no answer. Mom was crying again, her face in her hands. I sat back down, suddenly exhausted. I don't want to destroy you. I really don't. But I also can't just let this go and trust that you won't do it again. I need legal protection. I need my name completely separated from your business. And until that happens, that money stays exactly where it is. Williamson cleared his throat. What if we agreed to prioritize the removal of your name and provide you with a timeline for completion? In exchange, you could return a portion of the funds to cover immediate operating expenses. I looked at David. He made a subtle gesture. Your call. How much of a portion? I asked. $50,000 would cover this week's payroll and essential vendor payments. I thought about the employees who had nothing to do with this mess. People who'd done their jobs and deserved to get paid. I'll release $50,000 on the following conditions. First, I receive a detailed timeline for my complete removal from all business documents with specific dates and milestones. Second, you agree to have no further communication with me, except through our attorneys, until the process is complete. Third, you sign a document acknowledging that you used my identity without permission and agreeing never to do so again. Dad's face went purple. You want us to admit to a crime? I want you to admit to the truth. We could just file a police report against you right now, he threatened. Have you arrested for theft? David smiled, and it wasn't friendly. And my client will immediately file countercharges for identity theft, fraud, and forgery with evidence. I wonder who will come out worse in that scenario. The standoff lasted for several long seconds. Finally, Williamson spoke. I need to consult with my clients privately. David and I stepped out into the hallway. Through the glass walls of a conference room, I could see my parents arguing with their attorney. Dad was gesturing wildly. Mom had her head down on the table. You're doing great, David said quietly. Stay strong. 20 minutes later, we were called back in. Williamson looked tired. My clients agree to your terms. We'll draft the acknowledgement document and the removal timeline by end of business Friday. Upon your approval and signature, they request the release of $50,000. The money will be transferred within 2 hours of my signing the approved documents I confirmed. Dad wouldn't look at me. Mom was still crying, but silently now. We shook hands with the attorneys. Mine firm and confident, theirs reluctant and cold. Mom and Dad left without saying a word to me. In the parking garage, I sat in my car for a long time before starting the engine. My hands were shaking, not from fear or regret, but from the sheer weight of standing up to people who had controlled me my entire life. The documents arrived Friday afternoon. David reviewed them, first made some revisions, sent them back. By Monday, we had a final version. The acknowledgement was brief but clear. Thomas and Patricia Coleman acknowledged that they added their daughter Haley Coleman to various business accounts and documents without her explicit written consent. They agree that all future uses of her name, signature, or personal information will require her advanced written approval. The timeline was detailed. Removal from the LLC within 30 days. Removal from all bank accounts within 45 days. Release from loan guarantor status within 60 days, pending lender approval. I signed. I transferred $50,000 back to Coleman and Associates, and then I blocked my parents' phone numbers. Thanksgiving came and went. I spent it with my friend Rachel and her family eating too much turkey and playing board games with her nieces. Nobody asked me why I wasn't with my own family. Rachel knew enough not to pry. Jason texted me once. Mom wanted me to tell you they miss you. I didn't respond. December brought the first round of paperwork. I was officially removed from 2 of the 3 business bank accounts. The LLC paperwork was filed with the state, showing me removed as a principal. The loan guarantor situation was more complicated. 2 lenders agreed to remove me. One refused, saying I'd have to remain until the loan was paid off or refinanced. David negotiated. I'd stay on as guarantor for that one loan, but my parents would carry insurance that would pay it off if they defaulted. The policy would name me as beneficiary. It was expensive for them, but it protected me. By mid-January, it was done. Every piece of paper that had my name tied to their business was either corrected or insured against. My lawyer sent me a binder with copies of everything, proof that I was finally legally separate. I transferred the remaining funds back to Coleman and Associates on January 23rd. All but $50,000 that I kept. called it an administrative fee for 9 years of unauthorized use of my identity. David said they could try to fight it, but it would cost them more in legal fees than it was worth. They didn't fight it. I haven't spoken to my parents since that meeting in November. Jason keeps me updated occasionally. The business is struggling but surviving. Mom asks about me every few weeks. Dad refuses to mention my name. My Aunt Carol sent me a Facebook message calling me selfish and cruel. I blocked her. Cousin Brandon reached out to say he understood why I did it, that he'd always thought my parents were too controlling. We got coffee last week. The therapist I started seeing in December says I'm processing decades of manipulation and boundary violations. She's probably right. Some days I feel guilty. Most days I feel free. I'm planning a trip to Colorado in March. Something I never would have done before because Mom would guilt me about not visiting them instead. I'm dating someone new, a teacher named Marcus, who thinks it's attractive that I stand up for myself. I'm sleeping through the night. My credit score is excellent. Mine alone, untangled from anyone else's financial decisions. Sometimes I wonder if I should reach out, try to rebuild something. Then I remember that voicemail, the casual cruelty of it, the assumption that I was still a child who'd come crawling back. I think about the text I sent in response. I appreciate the heads up. At the time, it was all I could manage. Now I see it was perfect, neutral, unbothered, a simple acknowledgement that gave nothing away. They thought they were cutting me loose, teaching me a lesson about respect and gratitude. Instead, they freed me. Last week, Mom sent a card to my office. No return address, but I recognized her handwriting. Inside was a single line. We love you and we're sorry for everything. It wasn't the apology I'd asked for. It wasn't specific. It didn't acknowledge what they'd actually done wrong. It was just another vague statement designed to make me feel guilty for maintaining my boundaries. I put the card in my desk drawer. Maybe someday I'll be ready to respond. Maybe I won't. For now, I'm learning what it means to be my own person, to make decisions based on what's right for me, not what keeps the peace or maintains the family image, to understand that love shouldn't come with the price tag of accepting mistreatment. The restaurant where I met my brother for lunch yesterday had this quote on the wall. Family is supposed to be our safe place. Very often it's the place where we find the deepest heartache. Jason saw me reading it. Heavy, he said. True, though. He nodded, not quite meeting my eyes. Dad asked me to give you a message. I don't want to hear it, he said. He said he's proud of how strong you are, even if he doesn't agree with what you did. I laughed sharp and bitter. That's not an apology. I know, Jason said, but it's the closest he's going to get. We finished our lunch talking about other things, his kids, his work, the new coffee shop downtown, normal sibling conversation, carefully avoiding the crater in our family where holidays and gatherings used to be. When we parted ways in the parking lot, he hugged me. I get it now, he said quietly. What they did to you. I looked at some of those old documents you mentioned. Sarah and I went through our own paperwork to make sure they hadn't done the same thing to us and weren't clean. Just me on my stuff. He pulled back, looking uncomfortable. I don't think I realized how much they treated you differently, how much they thought they could just control you. Youngest daughter privilege, I said dryly. That's messed up. Yeah. We stood there for a moment in the cold January air, our breath making clouds between us. For what it's worth, Jason said, I think you did the right thing, even if it was messy. That's the thing about setting boundaries with family, I said. It's always messy. There's no clean way to say you hurt me, and I won't let you do it anymore. There's no easy path to claiming your own identity when someone else has been using it as their property. But messy doesn't mean wrong. I drove home through the city streets, past the neighborhood where I grew up, past the house where my parents still live. I didn't stop. I didn't even slow down. My apartment was quiet when I got there. Just me and my cat, and the life I built that belongs entirely to me. My name is on the lease. My name is on my bank accounts, only mine. My signature appears only on documents I've actually signed. It's a small thing maybe to someone who's never had their identity borrowed without permission. But to me, it's everything. I poured a glass of wine and stood on my balcony looking out at the lights of Detroit. Somewhere out there, my parents were probably talking about me, maybe with regret, maybe with anger, maybe with that complicated mix of both that defines most family dysfunction. I hoped they were okay. I really did. But their being okay was no longer my responsibility. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Still on for tomorrow night. I smiled and typed back. Absolutely. Life moves forward. The hurt fades slowly. The guilt gets quieter bit by bit. And somewhere in the back of my desk drawer, a card sits with an insufficient apology, waiting for a response I may never give. But that's my choice now. Mine alone.